Hello everyone and welcome to the video covering chapter 8 of our text. In this video we are talking about the Progressive Era. So we're talking about the early 1900s leading up to World War I. And in this video we're covering a lot of information, so I'm going to really be hitting more highlights in this video and just kind of expecting you to go back and hit those details on your own. But I'm going to fire off a lot of different ideas and concepts for you because the Progressive Era, although there are still a large number of atrocities that are going on in our country, we're also starting to see the birth of some real substantial social reform and social welfare. And so this is where the social work profession as a whole is really starting to gain speed as well. So let's talk a little bit about the Progressive Era from a really high perspective, and then you can dive in a little bit later on your own. So the Progressive Era, thusly named for really two reasons. One, the progressive side of things regarding like the social reform, but also progressive in that the country as a whole is doing really, really well economically. In the early decades of the Progressive Era, the national GDP increases by sixfold. You're starting to see a large fluctuation of income for the country as a whole. You're also starting to see a large population boom. So the population of the country doubles in this time period, from a little under 50 million to over 100 million individuals in the country. So large population influx. Now, within this Progressive Era, I did mention that there are some atrocities going on as well. One of those things that is still popping up is the eugenics movement. So the eugenics movement, you're going to dive into within your discussion boards. The eugenics movement is this idea that that science has the opportunity to come in and sterilize those individuals with undesirable traits in our society. And so at the time, what they were talking about were feeble-minded individuals, individuals with mental illness is what they were talking about, folks who were of other races as well. They were talking about individuals who were in poverty. And so within the United States, in the eugenics movement, they were working to sterilize the undesirables of our country to make a more pure country with more desirable traits. So that is a shadow kind of looming over the country as well. Now, there are still modern eugenics, and that has a very different meaning than the eugenics that is being discussed in the book. So this is more about a cleansing. Eugenics now has a very different kind of focus, but it is still a thing. So make sure to kind of differentiate those specifics if you're doing further research. At this time, the U.S. also feels like it has met its manifest destiny in that it is taken over the majority of our continent and has gained foothold across the entire country, and is kind of the supreme power in this area as well. You will see, because of this large influx of individuals, you're also going to see the Immigration Acts of 1907. So you're going to see the U.S. respond to the individuals who are drawn towards the U.S.'s prosperity by excluding as many individuals as they can. So you're going to see different kinds of immigration laws in place for different ethnicities or different nationalities. You will also see that the U.S. kind of picks and chooses who they want, and they talk out of both sides of their mouth at the same time. Like, for example, the business owners and the farmers encouraged Mexican immigration to help with their farmlands and things like that. But at the same time, they are afraid of other individuals taking white jobs, and so they're pushing people out of the country. So there's this real try to have your cake and eat it too argument that's going on in the country regarding immigration. You're also going to notice that although we're talking about a lot of social reform in this period, that the civil rights of African Americans are still being largely overlooked. So anytime that we're talking about social reform still up to this point, really what we're still talking about is reform for white individuals. And now we are focused on the social reform for white individuals in different categories of our country. We're talking about poverty, we're talking about mentally ill, we're talking about children, but we're talking about those white individuals. So even though we're progressing, we're still seeing the rights of African Americans being largely ignored still. The book talks about at the same time you're seeing a big resurgence of the KKK. It references that in Kokomo, Indiana, in the great state of Indiana, right here where this school is located, that there was a KKK rally that brought over 200,000 individuals to participate. So racism is alive and well at this time. They go on to say that about 1 in 8 white males are connected to the KKK. So that is a heavy influence at this time as well. But in response, you're also seeing a surge of strong African American leaders fighting for the rights of individuals of minorities, especially the African American. So you see Booker T. Washington as one example. You see W.E. Du Bois at this time as well. So Booker T. Washington was an advisor to several of the presidents. W. Du Bois was one of the founders of the NAACP. So you start to see a kind of a formalized response to the racism that is going on in the country as well. Regarding some of the social welfare reform, just to draw a highlight to some of those ideas, you see the name Mary Richmond pop up. Mary Richmond is important because she's responsible for coming up with the social diagnosis and casework method. So when we're talking about social work as it is today, that is still kind of essentially the ideas that we're working from, although it has continued to evolve. But at the bachelor's level, that's what you're doing, is you're doing casework. So working one-on-one with individuals, trying to understand that individuals don't have inherently a number of issues, but that there are systemic issues at play that can be addressed. There are resources that can be put in place to help individuals. So there is a shifting mindset at this point, that there are things that can be done for those who society is still considered undesirable. And so that we're doing that through a casework method. Although, as I said, it's still definitely in its infancy. Social reform is becoming a business issue. So there's this big push that if businesses aren't responding to their employees, that it is becoming an issue for themselves, and that it is kind of drawing a target on their industry. So businesses are being forced to respond to social issues at this time as well. You see the formation of the Children's Bureau under Taft. So the Children's Bureau is really set out to as an agency to help protect children. Especially in the world of employment. You see a minimum work age come out of the foundation of the Children's Bureau of being 14 years old. So up until this point, you're still seeing a huge number of child laborers. Even after this point, you're still going to see a large number of illegal and hidden child laborers. But this is a shift in that direction. So you see the implementation of mothers' pensions, which is a form of outdoor relief, so that mothers who are not working are able to receive income in the home to help with just the cost of kind of running the home and children. So you start to see that. Because of the introduction of mothers' pensions, you also start to see two different sides come out of social work. the settlement house folks were not a big fan of this idea of the outdoor relief, and so you start to see in social workers who are in the private realm um, kind of bucking at the idea of mother's pensions, and then social workers that were working more on the public side of things were pro mother's pension. So you start to see a split. Um, you see the rooting of psychiatric and medical social work start to become a thing. So so a more formalized approach to social work in those areas. Social work being recognized as being helpful in those realms. Keep in mind the social work at the time still looks nothing like it is today, but it's starting to, right? So we're getting in those fields. Um, there is at this time an increase in veterans welfare because of World War One. You see the implementation of aid for the blind and aid to people with disabilities. So so again, we're seeing an expansion of the social welfare that is being offered to individuals. And so amongst those early groups of individuals who are identified as being worthy of social welfare, you're seeing the blind and those with disabilities being included as well. Um, at the same time, in 1920, you see vocational rehabilitation form, and so that is something that is still in existence today. You see assistance provided for old age assistance. You see the formation of unemployment insurance. You see the formation of workman's comp. So these, again, are still concepts that exist in society today, all of which are taking roots in the Reformation or the Progressive era. So just kind of keep that in mind. There's also been a shift for juveniles. At this same time, there's been a more formal there's been a more formal push for things like foster care, adoption. There's more laws in place for the protection of abused children. We're not perfect yet. Well, we're still not perfect today, but we're shifting. Things are getting better for children and juveniles. And in the penal system, juveniles are starting to be treated as children and not as adults in many cases. And that includes separate facilities for juveniles compared to adults. So you're seeing that shift as well. You're also seeing some really specific changes come about within the social work profession. So in 1917, there are 17 schools of social work throughout the country that are formalizing the teachings of social work. The foundation of that curriculum being case management focused. You also start to see masters of social work start to come out in this time period as well. So you see that formalized education. That standardized education comes about in 1919, and shortly following, you see the development of the Association of the Professional Schools of Social Work, which is now known as the Council on Social Work Education, or CSWE. And if you want to look somewhere for that influence, all you have to do is open up your syllabus and you'll see the CSWE competencies. So the council is still alive and well, and that is the accrediting body for the program that you're entering into if you're pursuing your BSW, or if you're going on later for your MSW. Both are overseen by the council. So you're seeing that as well, that standardized curriculum, so that all social workers across the board who are identified as social workers are going through that same kind of training regimen, and formalized beliefs in terms of their approach to working with individuals. So you start to see that gathering as well. You're also starting to see money coming in the way of community chest, and out of that you see the United Way pop up as well. And we have a United Way right here in Evansville. So you see that taking root. You see the Family Services Association of America pop up at this time. And then you also again see, as mentioned a little bit earlier, this shifting of private and public social welfare and social work come about as well. So this by the 1930s, there was more of a split. There still is a split today in regards to private and public social work. So I think I mentioned in an earlier video, thinking about your values as a social worker, that if you have certain values that might be in conflict with the with some of the issues that are going to come up in the world of social work, that you should be careful about where you place yourself as a professional, if you're going to put yourself in the public realm or the private realm, as you as there's a little bit of different approach within each, as long as you're maintaining the standards of the profession as a whole. So so that is a, man, I just like rapid fired all that information at you. It came at you really quick. I just want, like I said, to make a video to highlight those pieces, and show you just how much is starting to take root right now, how the country is starting to shift. But it's really important that you go back and again, just kind of read, put all that into context, and so that you have a good understanding of these concepts as we move into the next chapter. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have any questions, as always, never hesitate to reach out. I really appreciate it, and thank you guys so much.